Hello and welcome to our daily loop video. Right, first things first, I'm going to show you our transfer bids. So this is our central defender with the 80 tackling, who's slow and whatnot. I think we just, it's not, with 75% of 12k or whatever, it's £3,000. I mean, it's not enough to care about this. I think we're just holding on to him until we get a replacement we're happy with, and we're not under big urgency to get a replacement, to be honest. Like, we have picked up some DCs. It is an area that we are, as long as we hold on to this guy, we got reasonable cover. I think at the moment, we have bought three that at the end of the day, if we have to use them, at least in the bottom division, we're alright with that. We got this guy for a bit of cover so we can sort of cope with one injury, and then I think after that happens, we're into the realms of using this guy, which it's not ideal, but at the end of the day, like, we're okay with that. We're using this guy a bit if we have to, sort of thing. Like, as the fifth choice, we wouldn't expect him to get much of a run, to be used much, and at the end of the day, there's still quite a lot of scouting pools left until next season. So I think it just makes sense basically to hold on to this guy, because there's just a huge difference between 80 tackling if we use him versus this other guy that I was just showing, versus sort of 57 tackling or whatever. I realised he was injured and he's come back from injury, so he should be on the bench probably instead of this guy. So let's just do that so we don't forget. So we're not going to accept that bid. Basically, it's the reason why, like, he's not building towards anything, but the wages are important here, and the starting squad players are 30k wages. So, like, any of these starting squad players, basically, that we feel can do a job. So that would be that central defender, but it's also going to be other players. For example, like our right midfielder, like this guy. Like, we're not going to be in any rush to sell this guy, basically. Even though we're looking for a player, we're keeping an eye out for a player that can, play in this role, who's younger and blah, blah, blah. Like, in regards to, it makes sense to hold on to this guy as the backup, basically, because his wages are really low. So, just got to bear that in mind. It's one of the reasons, for example, why perhaps we should potentially have held on to our starting striker that was perfectly usable, but we did sell him and we bought these other strikers. But there's a reason to have held on to him. But I think we will hold on to, for example, this guy. We'll probably end up holding on to this guy, for example, because he's quite well rounded and whatever. We'll probably hold on to this guy as that for a backup keeper. I think that's about it at this point, though, and potentially this guy as well, actually. So what was that, 5 guys that we're probably just going to hold on to. Whatever, I think it was the backup keeper, this guy, a Krieg, the right midfielder, so that's 3, this central midfielder, that's 4, and the central defender who's injured, that's 5. So it's 5 guys here that, those guys, we're just in no rush at all. That's quite a bit. I mean, that's 5 lots of 30k wages, potentially, instead of, like, realistically, we're saying 250, but, like, even then, it's going to be tough to average it out at that. Like, we don't have many players that we've bought. We have a few that are under 250, but, like, at the end of the day, you're saying 5 backup players at 30k wages versus 5 backup players at probably best case scenario an average of 250k wages. So what's that? On the one hand, you're saying that's 1.25 million a season in wages. On the other hand, you're saying it's 150k a season in wages. So you're talking about 1.1 million a season difference in wages for a few backup players. It's significant. So, and it's like, obviously in the end, it's worth, it'll be worth upgrading them all in the end. I'm just saying there's no, there's not the urgency, I suppose. And I think in particular this central defender is 34, and the striker that we're talking about was 30, which was a factor. And this guy will end up going, whether we want to or not, at the end of next season because he's retiring. But the rest of these guys we're talking about, like 24, the backup keeper, this guy 28. I think the right midfielder 29. This central midfielder 20. And yeah, so there's not like these guys potentially, a few of them, for example, the 20-year-old and the 24-year-old keeper, potentially they could be around for a couple seasons, few seasons. Like, there's no urgency whatsoever, basically. Is the point here. Just need to bear that in mind. And, right, so let's look at the scouter players. Right, we'll go through. We do have a bit of a... we keep covering this, but obviously on the finances at this juncture. So that's 2.5 million. So it's not much. And like I'm trying to say, like, we do have, I think, a couple more cash injections left. Two, I think. So 10 million plus this. But the thing is, like, we don't want to. We still have two more scouting pools after this one. So yeah, so we need to be very picky at this point. And then, like I'm saying, we have 2.5 million, but that's going down. So each day it's actually less. And even though we technically could play all the matches straight away to get the next 5 million to blow on players straight away, we'll still have then a whole bunch of days after that in the next weekly league period. So really, we just need to be quite picky with any players we pick up right now. So, basically, as soon as we're seeing older players like this on this type of wages, it almost doesn't, like, this guy probably isn't good enough to be tempted anyway, but it kind of almost doesn't even matter how good he is. We're just going to ignore. Crazy wages, it's too expensive for us, so let's just ignore. Again, just too expensive. The wage is too high. It'd be a really good player for us though in the DMC, like for us. But he probably is an upgrade over what we've got. But again, just too high wages and too old. He's a bit of an upgrade of what we got, but I think the player we're running is like 25 or something. No, 27. And yeah, even then, I'm not sure he is an upgrade. I mean, his tackling was higher, but his passing was lower. I think his vision was higher. I think he was faster. This guy's this guy's position. Yeah. Anyway, so it's not even clear, to be honest. Let's have another look. I mean, it doesn't matter anyway. His aerial ability is higher. So I'd probably overall this guy is a slight upgrade, but again, it's like for those extra wages and at that age, it doesn't make any sense. Right, too old, too high wages. Too old, too high wages. Too high wages, probably. I mean, 2 point. We technically could. No, we couldn't because of the signing fee. So technically, we'd fall slightly short to afford this guy. So we'd have to sell somebody. So he is an upgrade. I think he's just a clear up. He's much more well-rounded than our current right midfielder. He's got a lot of stuff that's not awesomely high, but the thing is, he's quite well-rounded. Like, a lot of stuff is around 50. And then he obviously does have a lot of high physicals here. He actually would be really well-suited for our left midfielder in our tactic. But as we alluded to before, like, we go to our tactic, there's nothing at this point stopping us from just like mirroring the whole thing over, so that effectively our left midfield role will then be on the right. We have that option available to us. So so basically he's suited to the left midfield role, this player, but that could be the right midfielder role. I think I sorted by overall this time rather than position. So yeah, I'm already halfway through, so we'll continue with this. Because he's got the tackling, I mean, ideally it would be higher for that, but also he's got the work rate. He's got enough speed to get up and back. And yeah, even though he's like dribbling and this stuff, like a lot of these technicals aren't quite like, they're good enough. Like, he's quite well rounded. So for example, if we compare him, he's going to be instead of this guy, basically. So like, he probably is an improvement. Even then, it's a bit unclear to like. Well, he's got the higher tackling, dribbling down, crossing down. Even then, it's not entirely clear, to be honest. Possibly. I mean, he certainly would just be an upgrade over our right midfielder, but he's also not the type of player like we want someone. So he'd be an upgrade over this guy, but not enough of an upgrade, I don't think, to justify basically the money and the wages and all of that. So it's a key role for us, like, yeah. So I think not. I think the thing is, he's just not quite there for either of the two roles. I think for the wide midfielder that is sort of getting up and back, like, he's close to that, but ideally he'd have more tackling. Ideally he still gets some dribbles and some crosses, so ideally the dribbling and crossing would be higher, and ideally the tackling would be higher. Now I understand in the end you're not going to get everything, but I think the thing is, it's like 3 things short here. If for example the tackling was higher and these were lower, we could maybe work with that. Or if the dribbling and or the crossing was higher but the tackling was still around 53, we could probably work with that. I think basically it's just like, he's quite solid for what we need for that role, but he's not perfect. And I guess for this type of outlay for us, like 700k wages and that, like, he needs to be basically closer to ticking all the boxes for what we need, I think. So I think we'll pass. And we also, again, we have to bear in mind at this point that, like, not only is he going to cost all of the money we have, but even more than that. So we'd have to cull a couple players, which we could do. We could scrape the cash up to get him, but then that's it. And then basically we couldn't. The next 2 scouting pools, we probably can't even buy anybody without doing some very inefficient sales. So I think, because of all those reasons, I think we're just going to pass. We would move for him if he was different, basically. If the dribbling and the finishing and the tackling, if all of those were higher, we probably would move for him. Or just other stuff was different enough to tempt us enough. But I think he's really solid. But yeah, like I'm saying, solid is basically just not enough for the outlay. Right, too old, too high wages. Too old, too high wages. Too high wages. Not quite what we need either for either of our roles, our MC roles. Too old, too high wages. Not quite what we need for the AMC. He's not really an upgrade over anything with the 2 guys we've got, and I think he's got higher wages than them both, and he's a bit more expensive than what they both were, I think. He's alright, because I think we were saying, for example, that he does basically burst, like, he gets chances where he bursts in the box and has a shot. So I think this guy, for example, He's fast enough for that, because he's not like needing to get in front of everybody. He just needs to be fast enough to find that bit of space, and he's got high enough strength for what he needs, I think. And the finishing is better. So he's better for the part where he bursts into the box and has a shot. But again, like, you are talking 71 finishing and 53 composure. It's not... It's better than what we've got, but it's not awesome. And then his long shots is lower. And then I think in particular, we would have... I think in the end now, we're looking for a guy, unfortunately, that's going to be difficult to find. But maybe we'll find him eventually. I think we're looking for a guy for this role that's got something like 70-something dribbling, which he has, 70-something finishing, which he has, 70-something long shots, which he doesn't, 70-something passing, which is close, 70-something vision, which is very close, and then probably like 70-something speed, and ideally high flair, which this guy has, and 70-something composure. So this guy is close, but because I think, for example, what are we running? There's the guys injured. So in regards to what we're looking for, it's like he is, well, similarly to this guy. I think he's got the better finishing and composure, which I think we weren't actively factoring that in too much when we were recruiting, when we got this guy. But I think we've since learned that he gets quite a few chances. I think he gets more chances because of the decent dribbling and speed. Like, there's that extra bit of opportunity for him to burst into the box. So basically, I think I think for this particular guy, like, the higher the speed and the higher the dribbling, the more important the finishing and composure becomes, and the less important the long shots becomes. But the passing and the vision is still super important. So we're looking for a lot here for this guy, to be honest. But I don't feel like... I think this guy is perhaps a slight upgrade over what we've got. But the problem with that particular position for us is that we've got this guy who we spent over $1 million on, and we got the guy that we were showing, which we've spent $675K on. We've also got this other guy that we spent $1.01 million on, who has like a bit higher passing or whatever, but he's a bit slower, but a bit stronger. He's more well-rounded, but I think less focused on perhaps what we need for this. But still, you can even see, like, he does really well in the role. So I think well-rounded isn't bad. I think it's a tough one, because I think, like I said, this other guy who's in the position is a bit faster, and it seems to change, and has the better dribbling, so he can move with the ball a bit faster when he's dribbling. And I think it just changes the role a bit because of that. So it's just something we need to be aware of. But I think, all things considered, we also have to consider that the guy that we're running is 23 and this guy's 26, and this guy's got a bit more wages. So I think it's like, I think probably this guy's an upgrade over both the ones we've got, but it's probably like, alongside this striker, is probably the thing we need the least right now, and it's only probably worth for us to try to pick anybody up in striker or AMC at this point if they're like effectively so good that you can't pass them up. Right, which I don't think this guy's in that bracket, basically, like, too good to possibly give up. So let's move on. Pretty sure it was this guy. It's weird, like, I think, yeah, because we were talking about this guy. Right, so there was a couple of guys that, to be fair, were close here. They were pretty close. And probably, like, if it was next season and we had more income and more money and we still hadn't found players for these positions yet, and we came across these guys, like, next month, we probably would just be at least buying this one anyway, and possibly buying this one as well. But yeah, that's not the situation we're in. So Right, too old, too high wages. Too old, too high wages. We're not using AMR. So I mean, maybe he's alright or whatever, but I don't think quite enough of an upgrade, especially to justify using up. I mean, he could be the MR role for our team, and he probably is a bit of an upgrade of what we got, but yeah, but especially to use that add position resource, if you want to call it that, it needs to be for better opportunity than this. Too old, too high wages, too old. Not good enough. Not good enough. We're not using right back in the main tactic, and we kind of have used them a bit because of injuries and stuff. Like, this guy's probably pretty solid right back if we were using one, especially at 22, 69 ceiling here, scope to improve. There's a lot of reasons why he's a little tiny bit pricey, but fine if you want him. And the wage is not a little bit over what would look, but again, fine. I think there's a lot of good things going for this guy, but the tackling would go up by 1, all the marking by 3. But I think we're just going to give a pass just on the basis that we don't use a right back. It's a pretty big factor here, pretty much. Right, so same sort of deal, like kind of in the ballpark of umming and ahhing and maybe not, whatever. But like we don't use the position, so they're just nowhere near good enough to justify using our add position on. Right, not good enough. Not as good as the guy we mauled and dwelled and eventually picked up the other day, who was also younger. This guy, he is fast but can't tackle. Can mark. Like, it wouldn't be too bad, to be honest, for us. Like in the role, the DLC role, but that primarily needs that. But that role also has quite a few headers, so. Basically, yeah, it's just not good enough. AML here, like, is it AML? Oh yeah, not good enough. Not good enough. We're getting down to the low overalls here with the younger players, so they probably all are not good enough. But it's definitely worth checking in case we find a little diamond in the rough here. Just who happens to have the right attributes. So I think not enough tackling for that. Not enough for us. I think in particular, if the speed's that low, the tackling needs to be higher. If the tackling's that low, the marking needs to be higher and the speed needs to be higher. Good aerial ability though, like definitely a little bit to work with there. Like if he was in our starting squad, this guy would have been starting every single match. Just with where we're at the moment. Like he's certainly better than this guy, for example, but who's had loads of matches for us. But it just doesn't. That guy was in our starting team, so he's on the minimum wages and whatnot, whereas this guy wouldn't be. So I think we'll just give a pass because he's 250k wages. So yeah, we'll give a pass. Just not good enough for what we need, basically. We're looking for specific attributes in the MC, so it makes it pretty easy. Like as soon as they don't have long shots, then they're excluded from one of the roles. Basically, one of the roles just needs a long shots, passing, and vision mostly, so it's pretty easy to exclude players from that role. And the other one just needs loads of stuff, basically, and so you can start to eliminate players. Like this guy potentially, for example, like again, if he was in our starting squad, this guy probably would have played a lot. But he's just not quite good enough, I don't think, to be our box-to-box midfielder. He is young, whatever. Like, we were trying to play the same tactic for the youth. If things were different, like, if we're trying to play the same tactic for the youth, maybe we'd get him to try to play that, which we want to do, but we're just not quite there yet. So, and I think at the end of the day, like, this kind of like jumbled, like decent or decently well-rounded, but kind of jumbled and kind of like, for example, doesn't ideally our box-to-box midfielder have higher long shots. Like, ideally he would have higher passing. Ideally he'd have more strength. Ideally more natural fitness, whatever. Ideally more aerial ability. Like, but at the end of the day, like, you know, like, if all you want is a very well-rounded player, central midfielder, and at the end of the day you're willing to compromise on basically anything just about, which we kind of are for that box-to-box role. Like, any one attribute could almost, no matter how important it is for that position, almost any attribute could be forgiven. At least, I think, maybe not entirely, like, for passing is an example of this. Like, you wouldn't, you know, it couldn't be 11 or something, but it could certainly be like 50. And again, with the tackling, like, couldn't be 11 for that role, but it could certainly be like, you know, 60 or whatever. So 50 or 60. So I think there's quite a bit of leeway there. Like, we just would want a player who's really well-rounded, I think, in the end. But I feel like that type of player is like the easiest type of player almost to generally sort of acquire over time, like to get through the academy trials. Like, a lot of you know, a lot of the academy trial stuff is looking for specific attributes. But in the end, if all you want is a generally very well-rounded player, it won't be that hard to pick one up. To pick them up, you know, multiple, and then hopefully one of them ends up with a high ceiling and you can develop them really well. So basically, I'm trying to say, I don't think there's anything, like, this guy looks quite nice and well-rounded and blah blah blah, but at the end of the day, to some degree, these types of players are dime a dozen. Like, they're much easier to find than, like, a central defender who's got, like, really high tackling, aerial ability, marking, whatever else, speed, whatever else, right? So we'll pass, basically. I think just pass, like, again, defender and striker, but can't finish or tackle. So kind of can do a bit of everything and not really anything at all. I mean, this would be a massive upgrade over our youth keeper, but it's just like, we don't really have the budget to spend this kind of money for a keeper for our youth team. So we're just going to have to pass. And at this point, I just don't see how we can possibly save basically for coming across a keeper that is good enough that we would also start in our senior team. So basically, buying a player for our senior team that happens to be young enough to play in the youth team, I don't really see how we buy a keeper no matter what for the youth team, because we basically we want to get our academy trial graduates come through, basically know who they're going to be, and if one of them's a keeper, we kind of just want to use that player as the keeper. So right, pretty decent or whatever, but like, again, it's just the type of player, like, I feel we can get a DMC with, like, really high passing and tackle. Like, if all we want is a DMC, which is basically this guy, right? Like, mostly he's not good in the air, he's slow, so he's got good passing and tackling. The long shots at the end of the day and the finishing and whatever, that's not going to really matter, and nor is the crossing really for the DMC. So at the end of the day, like, what's special about this guy is basically the passing and the tackling and the vision. So he's quite good for that core stuff, but at the end of the day, like, we're going to easily be able to pick up this type of player who is, like, slow and low endurance and low aerial ability and low determination, like, through the academy trials. Like, you're just easily going to find a player that has these strengths, and as long as you're happy to take on board all of these weaknesses, you'll find that player pretty easily, I believe. And the thing is, we can probably be a little bit even more picky. Like, we should be able to get one that has the passing, tackling, and vision, and maybe also like isn't quite so slow, or has better determination or better aerial ability or something like that. So, right, we don't play AMR. Don't play AMR. Probably just not good enough. Another sort of candidate for the box-to-box midfielder, but not just good enough, basically, to get him. We don't play AMR. It's not high enough tackling. Sort of alright or whatever, but again, like, we should be able to just get a player from our academy trial, like graduate, that's like pretty much better than this guy, even the season is 16. Like, yeah, the tackling won't obviously be over 60, but you should be able to get one that's close to 60 and close to 60 aerial ability, and maybe even better speed or marking or whatever. So we should be able to basically just get a graduate who's going to be better than this guy when he's 16, when better than what this guy might even be come the end of this season, when he's maybe not with all of this. Like, he's got a lot of quite a bit of upside still, but you know, point remains, like, he's not particularly good, basically. Not good enough. Yeah, it's not good enough. Alright, this guy not good enough. Same sort of deal as the other DMC, like who was older, but this guy is 16, so you're kind of almost comparing him to an academy trial graduate. Yeah, sure. I mean, this guy's had at least one training boost applied, maybe two. Yeah, it's two already. And he would get quite a bit out of this one, but you know, I think the point remains that it shouldn't be that difficult for us to sort of get a DMC that sort of has really high tackling and passing and is sort of like, you know, slow, weak, not particularly good in the air, etc. So, right. Again, it's just the type of player we should be able to just get better from our trial. Yeah, he's got high finishing and long shots, but again, like, he's also slow, weak in the air, etc. So it's right, don't play winger, and should be able to do better in our academy trials, and again, just should be able to do better in our academy trials. Again, just he has got some key stuff like tackling, marking, aerial ability, but he is slow and so on again. So I feel like this isn't like, you know, we've already got players that are probably just, we already know that they're better than this right now in the academy trials. So I think all in all, it looked like there were a couple of players that we might, if it was in the future at some point, we might end up bowing and getting them. But for now, I think today is the first day that we do not buy anything at all. So, right. So now we move on to our training options. This guy, I think he's just coming off the bench in some youth matches, is he? Yeah. So not that big a deal. We just sort of will pick whatever is likely to lead to hopefully a value increase the most. So it's, what is it, 2 finishing and a natural fitness against 4 tackling and a long shots. To be honest, that's close. I think the AMR, he's quite pushed up when he comes on. Can't really tackle. To be honest, he's not particularly good. I think we're just going the, probably this, but I think it's close, to be honest. 3 points. Because it is 3 points overall versus 5 points, and I think it is this one. I think it's a little bit better for this guy anyway, because he doesn't track back and tackle. But for our system and what he has to do when he plays, this is definitely better. But he won't be around long. Probably the better choice would have been just to pick whatever leads to a potential bigger value increase. But I don't know. I think that's close between the two. It might be the other one, but I think it's close. I'm not going to stress too much. This is our starting keeper, who we shouldn't have got because his wages are too high. But for now, I think we just need to pick whatever makes him the better player for us. Yeah, it's close. Right, we got to look at the guy at this point. So his durability is pretty high. and we are going to tend to be on top of matches, I believe, for as long as this guy's with us. Like, because of the nature of how we play, we will always be giving up some chances, but we shouldn't generally be giving up a high volume. So, and the fact that he's already got high durability combined with the fact that he shouldn't have loads and loads to do in matches. I think losing the 2 durability isn't that big a deal. We have struggled a little bit on set pieces, so gaining the 3 command of area definitely is like good, very good, and the 1 organization is good. On the flip side, not losing the durability is good. Gaining, again, the organization will help with the set pieces, so we're getting 3 points in that. It's pretty interesting. I think on the whole, because he's relatively good in the air and relatively fast, I think there is a bit of increased scope for him to grab, like, for his command of area to sort of be able to shine a little bit more in regards to claiming the corners and crosses and stuff himself. So I think that makes the command of area like a little bit more valuable per point than what the organization is, probably. And then the shot positioning, fine. I mean, we're happy to take that. But we really don't want to lose the handling, ideally. And in the end, that's what you're basically like. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting choice, to be honest, because I think this is actually what we want. But under most circumstances, if we're on a generic goal, like if you're talking generically for the average keeper or whatever, you probably would take the other one, because this one, for example, only nets you 2 positive attribute points for starters. This one's 5, so it's 2.5 times more. And the organization is kind of, it's something you're always happy to just have higher. And the shot positioning, fine, typically like you would pick this one, but I think in particular for us, I think part of a big reason for this is that losing the 2 durability really doesn't matter, because it's already high, and because we know that we're going to be like a dominant team, at least for the next couple seasons. If this keeper ends up around longer term and we're in a higher division, then this could be a problem. But it's like that's really long to project in the future. Like, it's long enough that you're going to have to be using contract extensions on this guy. We'll have multiple other chances to pick training boosts. Maybe we could potentially get a bit back up a bit. I don't know, but it's very difficult at this stage for us to sort of be planning for what. It's better that I think we just pick what makes sense for now, to be honest, than 3 seasons time for a 28-year-old keeper when we're in the position that we're in. So, right. So this is the other keeper that... No. Right, so he's not really... We had another keeper that... Okay, so it's a 24-year-old. Right, so this guy's just... not really doing anything much. So I don't suppose he'll be around much. We'll just pick whatever it's going to... I think there's just this one. It's just too many total attribute points more. And plus, it's probably the better choice anyway. I think the extra parrying is good. All of that natural fitness and determination. You're getting basically... So definitely, yeah, whatever. It's this one. Especially if we just care about the value. And that's all we care about. He's not playing, so it doesn't really matter how he's going to... what attributes we care about the most for our team? There is definitely... We may do a video at some point where we go over some different keepers. Like, we might do a massive epic video at some point where we maybe talk about... We sort of set our team up maybe in like 2 or 3 different tactical systems, and then have like go through 2 or 3 different keepers for each one and sort of explain for which tactical system which keeper is best. That might be something interesting to do, but I think to do that properly, it would be like a huge video, so we might plan for that one. Have to shout out a comment if that's the type of thing that you might be interested in. Right, so we're back to the training options. So, and this is a DC. He is getting some appearances for us. He might be around for a bit, so we should care a bit. But yeah, it's just this one because it's just better anyway. This is the left midfielder we've been using every game, so we care. Now, I don't think this guy, like, he's mostly like an up and back, like he's getting back to defend, he's moving up, so I don't think, for example, he scores ever much. So he scored once in the friendlies and none in the official matches. So I think all the sort of goal scoring, like he's typically one of the later players to join the attack. When it's built up, or he's like moving up the ball with the wing and crossing it. And if he does arrive late, there's like 6 players, and he's pushed all the way out to the left. Like, it's so unlikely that the shooting just doesn't. I mean, obviously, part of the reason why he's hardly scored is because he's got really low finishing long shots, and his composure isn't good. So he's probably has had chances. I mean, what we can do is, I guess we can just check. We can just check a couple of our matches recently. See if he's had any shots. So in this particular match, no shots. In this match, he had 1. These matches, I think those 4 we were playing a different system from memory. Yeah, so this one is where he got injured and led to us playing the different system. So in this match, he had 1. He has the odd shot. I'm not going to look more. Where am I going? Training, right. He has the odd shot, but that's the thing. Like, how much is... I mean, 4 finishing's quite a bit, as is 3 long shots. But how much is that? I think on the whole, though, like, we can sort of not care too much about these points on the whole, because even with those additions, he probably is not scoring whatever chances he gets anyway. Probably. Because you have to also consider he's shafted out to the left, so... Like, when he does get chances, like, typically, like, they're going to be from an angle. They're going to be difficult chances, basically, that requires a lot of accuracy. So even if we give him a bit of accuracy, he's still not going to have much accuracy. So I think on the whole, we can kind of just ignore those ones to some degree. I mean, obviously, I think, for example, we would rather the 3 extra points. Like, I think 3 points in finishing is more valuable than 1 extra point in long shots. So I definitely think this... Based on this alone, the B option has a little bit of an upper hand, let's say. So if we focus on everything else, the work rate's the same, the determination's 1 extra point. I think he's playing loads of matches and he's already 23. I don't think that 1 point of determination is that big a deal. So then you're left with the extra point in passing, which you want for this guy. Of all the bits that actually are different, that 1 point in passing is the most important. And like I said, I think you would rather the 3 points in finishing versus the 1 extra point in long shots. But then this side's also got the 1 extra. I think it's this side because we just want the passing. It's pretty close, but I think it is this side. I think in particular with how our team is, like, as well, I think even if it was like 1 extra point in finishing, versus 1 extra point in long shots, I think the 1 extra point in finishing would be more useful. So it is quite a difference. It's like, at least with how the team is, this guy's just not getting any long shots ever. I think all of his shots just about would be coming from inside the box. You can pay attention to that a bit in the future maybe, but I think that's true. So I think the long shots is almost redundant, I think. So what we're really saying is it's 1 determination and 1 passing 1 determination and 1 passing, or 3 finishing. But I still think we'd take the 1 determination and 1 passing. I think that 1 extra passing is like, it doesn't sound like much or whatever, and it kind of isn't, but it's like, he's already got decent passing, and I think just that, like, his main function is just not to score. That's the thing. His main function is to get up and back, to be a body, and to help build stuff up, and to hopefully not lose the ball, basically. And that 1 extra passing will help him do what he needs to do more than this other stuff will. This is a central defender that does play a bit for us, but, like, yeah. So he could be around for a bit. He could play some more matches yet. So we just want to pick what's going to help us from that perspective. I think the control matters a bit. The vision matters a bit. The composure matters a bit more than a bit. The work rate we don't particularly care about, and the agility, not much, but a little bit. So you're kind of saying you got a couple points here that extra that you're not that bothered about. 3 points that you care the most about out of everything. But on the flip side, you got 7 points that matter here. Let's check his attributes. So his composure's not that great. His vision, his passing is decent, so the vision gets more value on that basis. That, you know, because his passes are generally more accurate, for him to see more opportunities and to potentially attempt more tricky, like more difficult. Basically, the vision is more valuable if the passing is higher, so that's a factor. Hopefully it's obvious why. I may not need to explain that. Again, drop a comment if you want a much bigger explanation of that one, but I think that concept is hopefully, yeah, it's like, not that you have to have high in both, but it's just, I think if one of these is high, it puts extra value on training options for the other side, to make it not like, if it's low, if the other side is lower, to sort of bring it up closer. It's just extra value in those options. I think on that basis, and the control, again, it matters a bit. Like, we don't want him to have a bad first touch. It's very can be very expensive if that happens to a central defender. So I think we go with this one, even though we do actually care the most about those 3 points in composure. I think we end up with this option, all these things considered. And then this is the AML, who is like never being used hardly at all. Pretty sure. Yeah, just 1 match off the bench. So probably just picking whatever option might lead to a potential bigger value increase. So it's this one anyway, because it's just better. Right. And then the DC, this is the guy that we bought the other day. So he doesn't, his speed does go up. That was a low, so that's alright that it goes up. Not +6, but yep, it's alright. I mean, the thing is we know that he's never going to be that fast anyway, so it's, obviously we're happy for it to go up, but it's not the most important thing for him. It's better for, well, make no mistake about it, we care, but I think the main way that this guy becomes very, very useful for us is if the tackling goes up. I don't think it matters what anything else happens if the tackling doesn't get up a lot, and everything else can kind of be a bit flexible. So we don't know about the tackle. We knew about the tackling on the last boost though, because it already went up a bit. So the aerial ability matters a lot, I think, except if he's playing the role where the tackling matters a lot. So it's an interesting conundrum. Anyway, that aerial ability is important. The speed is important. The composure is important. The determination matters quite a bit because he's younger and he'll be playing a lot, so it'll be extra points. Dribbling, not big a deal, and finishing doesn't matter at all. So for now, I think we just ignore. I think on these bits, it's this side a bit. The composure pushes it to the other side. The speed pushes it back to this side. And then I think the follow extra points in aerial ability just makes it this option, I think. Yeah, I think this is just right. Basically. I don't. Yeah, so it's not like it does matter a bit for the player and factors here, like, and it is kind of like speed is just generically important, especially for like all the players around the periphery. We've kind of discussed this conceptually. So like, if you're ever picking the option that gives the least extra speed, like, you kind of need a like you want to be consciously doing that for a decent reason, like that makes sense. And I think this is that. I think it just makes sense. I mean, the other generic point as well is that we just also wanted to have more aerial ability through our team generally for defending set pieces and scoring off set pieces. So yeah, so there's that as well. This guy will be starting in our youth team until we sell him, basically, and has been playing a little bit for our senior team, especially when our left midfielder gets injured at the moment. He might have a bit of a future next season as a player on the bench to bring on to defend the lead or whatever as well. So we care a bit about this. When he is coming on, he might have the wing-back role a bit. So the work rate probably matters for that, but not as much for the fullback at all. And also, and the natural fitness probably doesn't matter too much because you're probably typically being subbed on, and that helps you get the condition back at half time. So composure matters a little bit, not much. The dribbling matters quite a bit, especially if he's got it's definitely this one, I think, between like the extra dribbling and the work rate. Those things are quite useful for the wingback role, which I think we will end up using him a bit. And then this guy, I think, just doesn't really matter. He doesn't play for the youth or seniors, so we'll just pick whatever's got the most points here. Looks like it's this side. So I say points. I don't mean literally counting the points up. I sort of mean like weighted points, as in like the total amount of points weighted as to how important the attributes generally are. And just try and do that quickly. So I think it's this side. So... right, and now we're going to do our Academy Trialists. Gosh, alright, so Flair got revealed. It's only 2. I don't know if these are the latest reveal. I can't quite... I just quickly check these every day. Sometimes it means that it's like... it was actually revealed the day before. So you're repeating the point, but... alright, marking don't matter too much for that. Movement don't matter too much for this guy. Tackling... yeah, so he's done. We were waiting for the tackling to come up, and obviously centre half, 15 tackling. So we need a replacement for this guy. Aerial ability, 60. Awesome. And I think that was one of the... yeah, we were waiting for the aerial ability to come out, hoping that was high, and it's as high as possible. And now the tackling. So this is an example when we're looking at these DCs before in the scouting pool. Like, if this tackling comes out high, then this guy's basically already better than those other guys those other young DMCs we were looking at who were multiple years older. And this guy will already basically be better straight away if the tackling comes out really high, irrespective of whatever these other attributes are, basically. So we're definitely holding on to him at this point to find out the tackling. And then the durabilities come out pretty low. It's not ideal, but again, I think that we're waiting at this point for the parrying to come up because it's next. So we're sort of happy to hold these other guys. There might be but we definitely want one. And if we happen to find more than one, then more than one that we really want, then we'll worry about that. So this guy, for example, the speed, its finishing doesn't matter, but then it's speed. The tackling is a ways away. I think in regards to what matters for a DC, marking we care about. Determination's great if he's playing. Speed not awesome, but alright. If you will go for this guy if we can't find anything better. Like, we're alright to sit on this guy. He's generally got high attributes. We would find out the speed soon enough, which could just ignore him at that point if it's low. If that is high, we can sort of just wait. B, C doesn't really matter. D doesn't really matter. E matters. So you're waiting a bit. But yeah, anyway, let's keep looking. Maybe there's something. It's not a great one to have, to be honest. We wouldn't replace any of our other guys with this one. It's just too much waiting to find out anything that's going to lead you to know if you're going to keep him. This guy, I think probably just not like just like tackling is alright or whatever if other stuff was good, but it's like the aerial ability isn't, and we don't know other stuff like the marking or the speed. So yeah, I think we just pass. Tackling not high enough, plays right back. Tackling not high enough, plays left back. Don't use wingers. It's got some really cool stuff. Dribbling, crossing, control. That's kind of awesome. But we probably just, on the basis we don't use wingers, we just probably not. And again, like, you probably at this point, you want to know what his speed is before you're going to decide to keep him or not. And then the determination matters if you're going to use him to help you. So there's a lot of waiting to find out. You might just get disappointed in the end. So anyway, we're not, we won't bother because he's a left winger. This guy, slow-ish, and don't see anything else here that's going to make you care. Shot stopping too low for us. Tackling too low, and not enough. Like decent in ways, but we'd just be looking for excellent at this point. I think in other ways to want to take on a DMC with tackling at 31. Right, this is definitely a guy we could consider. I think the passing and the tackling is great. The vision meh, but it has really high marking. Composure, blah blah blah, but like the aerial ability is super high. So if this speed come out really high, then he could be alright. And I think the fact that the speed is coming up next, and he's already, like you can see here on the bar, so he's quite a ways to being revealed. So you sort of will potentially find out this sort of finished product, or close to that sooner. So like there's more information here. Because at the end of the day, most of these guys that look super good with a lot of stuff not revealed, some of this stuff is probably going to come out pretty disappointing. So at least you know how this guy disappoints you. It is pretty interesting because he is kind of like a guy of extremes, right? Like there's a lot of this stuff close to 60 and a lot of it close to 1. So it's pretty interesting. But I think some of these strengths are really big deal. I mean, the finishing don't care too much and the movement don't care too much. But yeah, the passing, Anyway, there's some strong stuff here. If he comes out like really fast, then it's interesting. I don't know if you'd end up keeping him though. Some of these things are like they matter pretty much. That low vision and low positioning matters effectively. So right, don't use that position. A bit slow. Blah blah blah. Don't use this position and. Some cool stuff, but again, you're waiting ages to find the speed out. We don't use that position, so alright, just not good enough. Like too low marking and just other stuff isn't high enough to make up for that. Not good enough for what we need for an MC. We don't use a DL. Tackling ways off. Don't know the speed for ages. Don't know the determination for ages. And this guy, tackling not great, and the other stuff is kind of pretty cool or whatever, but it's not enough to probably make up for that. And then you've got the issue, you're just waiting ages to find out the speed. And then this guy, you're waiting ages to find out the passing or the tackling. He doesn't have high enough long shots, so he's going to be the box-to-box midfielder. It's possible he could end up being that, but you're just in a massive waiting game, because for us to know that for sure, like we would want to know say for sure, but like if the passing comes out low, it's basically instantly dismissed. If the speed comes out low, it's basically instantly dismissed. If the tackling comes out low, it's instantly dismissed. And if the endurance and all the natural fitness basically comes out, well, maybe if the endurance was high enough, then maybe the natural fitness could be lower. But basically, these as a set need to be high enough, otherwise he's instantly dismissed. And if all of those come out good enough, like you still care about what the speed is. If he's way too slow, he's instantly dismissed. The work rate is low for there's just not enough going on there. It's just going to take stars to align pretty much for that guy to end up in. So in the end, there was 2 guys. I think we were saying that. I think this guy we would be all right to take on board, and then just see what that is. And then there was, I think, this guy. That was it. This guy. I think it was this guy that. If we couldn't find anybody else, we would take him on. But I think we did find somebody else. So I think. We already have got a DMC sitting here. But we'll find out his tackling, so he could instantly be gone. The other guy will find out the speed, he could instantly be gone. So I doubt one of those 2 probably doesn't work out straight away. So you're going to be rotating one of these 2 out probably the next day or 2 anyway, so it's not a problem. Alright, so I think it was this guy. I'm not 100% sure. Let's double check. Yeah, it was this guy. Was it? No, it was this guy. Geesh, that's interesting because they... Yeah, okay. God. Right, this guy. So I think that's alright. I don't think there's anyone worth... Because this guy will find the parrying out. Like the problem with this guy here is that you kind of just... You're waiting for that, and then maybe... But even if that works out, you're still going to want to know the tackling, and you're waiting for ages for that. And he's no good for any other role, like for DMC or whatever, because of the passing. So I think, yeah, unfortunately, he does have an ARA of 41, but I think it's just, give it a pass. It's about playing the odds here. Like at the end of the day, we still have loads of players that are going to cycle through for the rest of this month, so we just want to... We just don't want those spots being held up. Like, we'd just be waiting ages to find out. Like, the speed could come out. The issue with holding him is he's saying, well, just wait for the speed. But it's like, if that comes out low, you can dismiss him. But if it comes out high, it's like, then what? You know what I mean? Like, you're waiting, what, then the movement? Like, then the aerial ability, fine. And then the attack. I mean, it's not too bad, I suppose. Because once you get to the speed, the problem is you're still potentially 3 days off of the speed. And the finishing doesn't tell you anything. So you're potentially saying like 3 days, A, B, C, D. Like you're talking like 7. You're potentially talking. In the dribbling, you don't care. In the movement, you don't care. So then you need to get to the aerial ability after that to know anything else. And you're sort of saying that's like 8 days away. And then even if the speed and the aerial ability both come out at 60, the tackling can just come out at 17 or something, you know. So just feels like you're not playing the odds, I suppose, is the way to put it. It just feels suboptimal versus just basically having some player like this guy where tomorrow you find out the parrying is low and we can just try another guy. So it's better to basically, yeah, I don't know. It's just, that's the thing. Just want to play the odds. So, right. That is that's the daily loop video. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one.